What's the financing look like? What do I need for equipment? Who do I need to hire for people? All this stuff, there's all these now, okay, if I've made this decision to do it, now I got to back it up. Mm-hmm. And that's the one big decision that has to be defended by all these other things to come behind it, right? And that one yes has to be defended by 1,000 no's. That's this mentor that has taught me some things. That's one of the big things he says. You have to defend that one yes with 1,000 no's, meaning you've made this choice, do what is necessary to make that work. So.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Ryan Snod. It Rhymes with Odd, and you're listening and watching the Rhymes with Odd podcast. Today, we're coming back with another episode with another guest for you guys. It's Andy Wailes is in the house. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here. First podcast experience, so this should be fun and interesting.
Sure. There's multiple people that have said that. They're like, I've never been on I've listened to podcasts, I've never been on one. Welcome to the other side, the dark side of podcasting.
Thanks.
Andy's story is going to be interesting. His kind of path to entrepreneurship, doing what he does. So to kind of give an overview, I would say you're like a business owner, but you do specifically in the drone area in the ag space. So can you tell people like who you are and what you do?
Yeah, Andy Wailes, as you said. So I run a company called Precision Aerial Applications, long name, but I think it accurately describes what we do. So primarily we focus on, as you said, the agricultural industry, drone spraying, but that's changing over time as we do more things and are adding more services. So last year was our first year in business. Got started, sprayed primarily fungicide, insecticide, foliars, and then got into some cover crop as well. And then currently looking at adding services as we go and kind of expanding what we're capable of and filling up that schedule year round is kind of the goal. So
Sure. Yeah. Well, and we'll get into kind of the current stuff after a bit, but I think Andy's story is super interesting. And the way that him and I know each other is because Scott, your brother, was one of my groomsmen in my wedding, good friend of mine from college. So it's been interesting to kind of be an outside perspective on this, to kind of see it kind of pop up. Because I think your path to the ag industry and also like flying drones professionally is not what you would normally expect for how you got there. So
right.
I think it'd be fun to kind of go to your backstory. Like, where'd you grow up and how did you get kind of where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. Well, as you know, grew up in Boone. Boone-Tucky is one of my friends calls it. I don't know where that comes from or why, but I think it fits in some respects. So, along with my younger brothers, I grew up doing construction for my dad and learned the value of hard work. It's something that I've always appreciated. And, not to go too much into the details of things, but...
Oh, you can. It's a podcast. We got time.
It could be a long story, but, you get to that age where you kind of are figuring out what I want to do with my life and what I want to be, all these things. And I saw my dad work really hard, and he provided for a family of 5 kids. He gave us a great life, him and my mom. And I always thought kind of a sense of obligation to maybe take over what he was doing at some point. And we had a conversation about this, and he said, well, I don't want you to feel like you have to do that. I want you to do whatever you want to do, And I liked construction, but I didn't want to be the guy swinging the hammer. I didn't want to be the guy hanging the drywall. No offense to my brothers if they watch this, because they're, now have since bought out my dad, kind of ironic, but I appreciate it. But I thought, maybe I'll do engineering. That way I can be designing the projects, right? I can oversee things. Maybe I'm not quite as hands-on, but can still be involved in that world. So that's what led me down the engineering path. Went to Iowa State, took me an extra half a lap. I got 4.5 years to get the civil engineering degree and went into that. And that was good. I don't regret my path that way. I learned a lot. Even that path took me a lot of different directions than I really originally planned.
Because in the civil engineering route, that's like bridges, building, like what kind of, because I know there's a lot of different areas of engineering. I'm unfamiliar with it. Which area were you wanting to go into?
See, at one point I was thinking more of the bridges and buildings design side of things. You can do that. You can do, which is kind of more structural, if you will. It may have changed since I was there. I have to really think. It's been a minute since I was in college. But structural, geotechnical, which is soils and foundations, transportation, environmental, which has since grown a lot, with green energy and green technology. They've added a lot of different things to the program since then, and I'm trying to think. I don't know if there's another one.
Sure, there's a lot of engineering sides of it, because I know I was in the talented and gifted program in elementary school for 1 year. I felt like I was in the wrong class sometimes. Right. I'm like, these people are way smarter than me. Yeah. There's one kid though that his science fair project was like a structural engineering.
Oh wow!
Like he built this whole model out, and like he was trying to explain it to us and the teacher.
Yeah,
and it was just like, over our
Way
heads.
over
Like
your head.
none of us could follow it. I'm like, this dude is a freaking genius.
Yeah.
But some people's minds just work
Right.
like that. They can see like a design in their head and just come, or they know the math that goes into it.
Yep.
Because was yours more the artistic creative design part, or did you like the math and the numbers and that type of thing?
Yeah, no, I can't even draw good stick figures, so the creativity and all that's not really my thing. Yeah, I'm just much more science, math. From working with my dad, I can visualize things, and I can look at a house plan and kind of visualize what it would look like in real life and things like that. Just my mind works way differently than, for instance, my wife's, and now that we have kids, my daughter is a lot more on the creative side of things, and my middle child, he's 6, kindergarten, he thinks a lot more like me. So a lot more technical, specific, and it's kind of fun to see, yeah, she is not at all like me in how I think and what she's really interested in versus my son. I feel like he and I relate and connect a lot more, and we think the same way. So
sure. It's kind of interesting how like our minds are predisposed to think a certain way. It's good. It's great though, because it's like I'm not the technical like specific like type A person. I'm so glad those people exist, because the bridges would be falling apart, the cars would be collapsing as they're driving down the road. Like you have to have people that can design those things. So
yeah, and I have a big appreciation for that, because looking back what it took to get my engineering degree, it was a lot of hard work, and there are people that, like you said, just have that predisposition, that mindset for that. And I appreciate people that want to design the bridges and buildings, because the amount of energy that goes into that is not something I really had interest in. So,
sure.
But, I got the engineering degree. I ended up kind of more in the utility space of things. That wasn't by, I don't know if it wasn't by choice, but it was 2007 and the job market was kind of wavering. And I had an opportunity to go to work for a company that was more in the municipal side of things and work for them. So that was kind of storm sewer, water, sanitary sewer stuff, which was not fun. Did that for a couple of years. Then kind of got onto electric side of things for a few years, and ended up in gas for a few years. So that's just kind of my path. I never ended up moving towards the bridges and buildings. It never went towards the geotechnical or the transportation side of things.
Sure.
So
when you were in college, did you have a moment of like, am I going down the right path? Or did you feel like when you were pursuing that, you were like, oh, this is really, I really enjoy this in the coursework and stuff you're learning?
I definitely had a moment where I was wondering, is this the right path? But maybe this wasn't the right choice. I mean, I have a hard time. I was just telling my brothers this last night. I have a hard time regretting the path that I took, because ultimately it led me to where I'm at now, right?
Yeah.
But I think it was senior year, something like probably junior year, going into my first of 1.5 senior years. So yeah, it was the summer before my senior year, where I was really wondering, like, okay, is this really what I want to do? Is this what I want to spend my life doing? But at the same time, I felt, my gosh, I'm already 3 years in, about to start my 4th. What am I going to do differently now? And not knocking college or anything that way, but I think a degree is going to lead you down a certain path. But ultimately, how many people do we know that don't even use their degree now, including me at this point?
Including you.
So go figure. But no, I just decided to stick it out, had some conversations with a couple people that I really trust and still do to this day about things. And they recommend, well, stick it out. You'll have the degree, which ultimately should open some doors for you to other things. And I think that is still true. Mm-hmm. This may be an unpopular opinion. I don't think a college degree is necessary currently, not to go down that route. That's a whole other thing. But
sure. It's a valid opinion, though, I think, these days.
Well, when you look at the cost of living, the expense of education, does it outweigh, does the benefit of getting that, so to speak, outweigh not getting it?
Sure. It's tough, but also like, I think of someone like yourself where you're in this new niche and industry. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, if they don't have exposure to things that make their brain learn and grow, you just give up at some of those, because it's like, I've never challenged myself before. It's like, now I got to go like sell farmers on chemicals and try to figure out this new business, hire people, manage a business. Like, it's overwhelming. I'm just going to go get another 9 to 5. Like I think some people are just designed for it, but also the fact that you had some on-the-job experience learning with your dad and you're seeing your family business grow. I think that's such a gift in the way that you had that to kind of be a lesson for you early on, because a lot of people don't have that either. So
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of people in today's world, they see their dad and their mom both go work somewhere else. Again, nothing wrong with that, but that's what they see. So that's what they're conditioned to believe is the right path. And for some people, it definitely is. I mean, backing up to engineers, I know some engineers that are way better at communicating with computers than they are at people. Nothing wrong with that. It's just they don't have, for whatever reason, it's the way that they're wired, and they prefer to be in that space, and that's what they want to do.
Sure.
I've never considered myself a traditional engineer in that I like to communicate, although I'm not outwardly super social, I wouldn't say. You may disagree with that. Like a lot of people that I know wouldn't say that about me, but in here, I know that it's not natural for me to just go up to people and say, hey, and start conversations and things like that. But I'm definitely not more of the inward antisocial, so to speak, that some people can be.
Sure.
in that engineering space. So
no, I totally get that. I think it's interesting too. You mentioned like your kind of a thought of potentially taking the family business or being involved in that process. Mm-hmm. At what point did you realize like I wanted to pursue a different path? Because you mentioned that your dad was okay with you not doing it. I know, especially a lot of the farmers you talk to, this is a very common thing of like, you're taking the family farm over and there's no like, they've decided their future for you. Right. What was kind of the thought on like, if you were to voluntarily do that, the interest there and kind of exploring that as an option for you?
For my dad's business?
Yep.
You're asking what was the point in which I decided not to pursue that?
Yep. And ultimately why? What was kind of the reason why you steered away from it?
Yeah, I mean, I got into engineering, and I had a good experience with an internship that I worked in college. So a lot of engineering students, they'll do a different internship with different companies for multiple different years. Excuse me. For mine, I worked for the same company for 2.5 years. I don't know. I don't know if I have a good answer other than life just kind of progressed on to the next thing. And I felt like, well, once I was getting this engineering degree, it was kind of no turning back in terms of, all right, well, I could go back and work with Dad and eventually take it over. But I, for whatever reason, decided not to. My first job was out in the Quad Cities, so it was 2.5 hours away. So that took me further from home. It's possible, and I hadn't really thought about this, but had I had a job closer to here, and closer to Boone, that maybe I would have done some more work with him and eventually gone that route. But Kevin and Scott, Kevin's 3 years younger than me, Scott's 9 years younger than me, and they were still coming up, I think. And by the time they were old enough and out of school and ready to get more involved and take over the business, I was already so far down the path that I kind of felt like I was just going to stay the path. What's ironic about that statement, though, is that I then upended everything a year ago and went a completely different direction anyway. So I don't know. Sure. I mean, it's now that I'm thinking about that, I'm like, I don't know if there's ever a path that I just said definitively I'm not going to do that, other than I was already getting the degree, Mm-hmm. There's a part of me even today that I almost kind of want to go back to that because I like working with my dad. I like working with my brothers. Now, my dad and I used to butt heads a lot when I was in high school, but today we're great friends. Same with my brothers. We get along great. And it'd be a lot more fun to be a part of that if I could. But
sure.
Now their skill level and what they do is far exceeded mine. So I'd be apprenticing them basically. So there's some irony there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. That's really cool. Well, and it's interesting to see too. I mean, it's always fun going over to your guys' place and seeing all the family together and whatnot. It's a fun dynamic because I know some families that are just always feuding. They're always struggling with But it seems like you guys get along pretty well, so that's great.
I think for the most part, we're all adults now, so there's some differences of opinions and thought process. But at the end of the day, we all love each other. Right. We all want to be around each other. We all want to be a cohesive family. We had a great example of that with my mom's side of the family, and I don't know, maybe Scott has talked about this before. Mm-hmm. Mom grew up. She was a twin, but her twin passed when she was like 2 or 3 weeks old. She did not live very long, her twin. So she was actually one of 10 kids, but 9 remaining. She was right in the middle. Well, there's 24 grandkids. I'm one of 24. So I have 4 siblings and 20 cousins, basically, or 19 cousins. And so family events, we would always get together. And it was a small farmhouse out at this town called Dedham, south of Carroll. And we'd all get together at my grandparents' farmhouse. So if you can imagine, basically my parents and 16 other aunts and uncles, my grandparents and 24 grandkids, all in this small room. I mean, there was no room to walk, but these are things that just resonate with me and how this family all got along. Even with that many people, they just had good relationships. And they didn't always agree on things, but at the end of the day, they loved each other and they supported each other. And I think my parents they worked really hard to instill that in us. and it carries through to who we are today. I see my sisters doing what they're doing, and with Heather and Seth raising their family and doing a great job with that, instilling values into them. We're trying to do the same with our kids, Kevin and Brittany with their daughter Harper, and then Scott and Kenzie and Hannah and Nick coming along as well. I'm sure the same thing will be true there. So yeah, it's something I'm very grateful for. It's something that really defines, I think, not only me, but our entire family. And it is unique. Like you said, a lot of people don't get along with their family or they have these issues. And there's a little bit of that. But I think that I've even had some friends that are like, yeah, your family's kind of weird, man. Like you guys all get along and you like seeing each other. And that's just the way that it is for us. So
sure. No, I love hearing it because I know it's interesting. I had friends in high school that they'd have brothers that were 1-2 years difference in age, hated each other. Yeah. Same other friends, like other side of the town, like same age difference, best friends. Like it's all like, it just depends on how you get along. And if you take the time to, get past the hardships, which is fun. So jumping back into the story, you're working in the engineering world. Yeah. How long were you working in that industry for? And then at what point was kind of the breaking point that you decided to kind of explore this other career that you wanted to shift to? Yeah.
So I spent, it'd be about 15 years in engineering, just doing those different careers. And it was good. I worked for good companies, had good experiences, but at the same time, the corporate world, again, controversial opinion, but the corporate world just wasn't fulfilling for me. For some people it is. It just, I saw a lot of politics. I saw a lot of things I didn't like. And you kind of get this thing in your head where you're like, oh, it'll be different at the next company. It'll be different at the next company. Well, you jump companies or maybe it's the next department or you move departments and you realize it's more of the same thing. Now, I'm sure that some of that is internal. Like it's stuff that I have a hang up on that maybe the company just has nothing to do with. It's my perception of things.
Yeah.
But I think growing up with that entrepreneurial household, it was something that was always kind of calling me back. And what kind of the pivot point, if you will, is it would have been around Christmas of 22, so about 15 months ago, somewhere in there. Had a conversation with a good friend of mine, and he goes, "What do you know about fungicide and corn and soybeans and all these things?" And I said, "Nothing, literally nothing. I didn't even know anything about fungicide or what it was." And we started talking about it, and he had a couple of connections to some people that had gotten into agricultural drone spraying, and so we talked about it some more, and we kind of looked at, well, what's the business model look like, and what's the potential profitability, and is this viable? Is this something that can be done? And we arranged a meeting with some guys out in Grinnell that sell these drones. They're the longest running drone provider of this type in the state of Iowa. Very reputable guys. Excuse me. And we went out there to their shop and spent 2.5 hours just asking them a bunch of questions, just question after question, and showing us around the drones and how things work and all. I'm sure 90% of them were stupid questions, Sure. But we were just learning. It was me and a couple other guys. And
what was this guy that connected you? Was he a farmer, or did he also do this business? And you were just, and he was like encouraging you to join it as well?
Yeah, he's kind of what I would consider a financial advisor, kind of I don't like to use this word, but he is kind of a mentor to me. And
Sure.
Now that is a loosely used word in today's society. But this man has truly poured into my life. Megan and I, him and his wife, have poured into both of us for a number of years. It's somebody that I would consider my best friend and very, very close. A guy I basically trust with everything, which is rare to find. And I think he just truly has my best interest at heart. And so he grew up on a farm in Northeast Iowa. So he had the agricultural background. His brothers still farm today. And he for some reason, I guess I don't know if I've really asked him, but he thought of me as somebody that would have interest in this. He knows my background, he knows my family, and I think he saw that this is something that I could do and do well with, run at pretty hard. So
Sure.
I'm thankful for that. He kind of introduced the idea and the thought, and then it was kind of up to me with what to do with it, And gosh, I started looking at it more and more and just couldn't get out of my head, And I've told this story to a few potential customers because they'll ask me like, how'd you get into this? Because it is kind of a niche market right now. It's growing in popularity, which is cool in some ways and not so great in others. Maybe we can talk about that. But I said, there was this one night and went to bed thinking about this. And I'm like, gosh, I couldn't get out of my head. And I went to bed at like midnight. I never go to sleep. I don't go to bed as early as I should, like ever. It's a bad habit. But Went to bed, and I think it was 11:30, maybe 12, and woke up at 2, and I just couldn't get back to sleep. Like, I just couldn't get out of my head. And I went to the gym because I'm like, I could not get back to. I laid in bed for like 2 hours. Finally got up. I'm like, I'm just gonna go lift. So, lifting weights and just thinking about this, and I'm like all fired up, and motivated. And I'm like, I'm just gonna do this. I just decided that was kind of the day. I wish I marked it on the calendar. I have no idea what day it was, but I'm like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna figure it out. And I think that's just that spirit, that entrepreneurial spirit that, I don't know, it just was in me from day one, maybe. But, and so, yeah, started figuring out how to start a business, because I never started a traditional business before. What's the financing look like? What do I need for equipment? Who do I need to hire for people? All this stuff, there's all these now, okay, if I've made this decision to do it, now I got to back it up. Mm-hmm. And that's the one big decision that has to be defended by all these other things to come behind it, right? And that one yes has to be defended by 1,000 no's. That's this mentor that has taught me some things. That's one of the big things he says. You have to defend that one yes with 1,000 no's, meaning you've made this choice, you've chosen this path, okay, now continue do what is necessary to make that work. So
sure,
that's kind of where it began.
Well, it's interesting too, like kind of having that quick thought, because like in my experience with entrepreneurship, like I was just doing the thing I'm doing now, and everyone's like, "When are you going to quit your job?" I'm like, I would never do that. Like they saw it before I saw it. Where you had this thought, and you're like, this is exciting to me. Like, it's keeping me up at night. What was kind of that first process to get started? I mean, I'm assuming you didn't just quit your job the next day and try to figure it out. Like, what was kind of the on-ramp to get you to that point? Yeah. And then did you tell your wife right away, or was it one of those things you were tinkering with before you're like, got this idea, gotta quit my job and start a business?
Well, and I don't remember the first conversations that Meg and I had about it really, but she was aware of it. We try to communicate about stuff like this. I mean, this is a potentially life-changing thing for us. And so she needs to know what I'm thinking. I can't just spring this on her, So I'm trying to think back with her, like she was in the know. And the next process was, it was starting to figure out, okay, what does financing look like? Getting an idea of, okay, what kind of a trailer setup do I need? What kind of, because the drones are the obvious thing that I need. I need to get a drone and get a quote from these guys in Grinnell. What does that look like? Okay, what's that expense? And then what do I need for a trailer? What do I need for water tanks, chemical tanks, pumps, hoses, valves, nozzles, all the stuff. It was just starting to piece that together. And I was continuing to work a job. I mean, I gave my best effort at my job, and I think that you should do that. They're paying you to fill a role. You should be doing that to the best of your ability, which admittedly, it became hard because this became my passion, was to start this. And so, I mean, instinctually, I kind of just wanted to flush the job thing and just focus on this, but I couldn't do that, so I had to wear many hats. So it was kind of job during the day, Monday through Friday, and then nights and weekends was basically figuring this stuff out. Another thing was, okay, where am I going to find the acres? Where am I going to find the customers? Where's this going to come from? So I had some connections, but at that time, I wasn't doing what I'm doing right now, meaning like stopping by and introducing myself to growers and, hey, I'm in your area. This is what I do. I wasn't doing any of that. It was, in my perspective, has totally flipped on doing that now. But at that time, it was, okay, starting to reach out to some potential contacts, started having some conversations with some associates around the Ankeny area. A guy that I know from the gym, he and I are friends. He actually put me in touch with somebody that he knew that's like, oh, yeah, they're going to be all about this. And that led to some work for me. Mm-hmm. Some friends of mine that have family that farm, things like that. It's just like reaching out and starting to do the work of finding potential customers as well. So, and that was kind of all this stuff at once. I mean, it wasn't like step A, B, C, D. It was kind of like do all these things together and kind of navigate it. So there's some interesting stuff that way, that just challenges with what to figure out. And then the legality of all of it as far as setting up the business, because I'm an incorporation, so I had to get incorporated. So I needed a lawyer, I needed an accountant, I needed to do the FAA paperwork, all the exemptions that you need for that, which that's a longer process as well. Mm-hmm. Maybe I don't know if I'll go too much into detail, but basically you have to have this exemption from the FAA in order to fly these drones. Well, to have your own business under that exemption, you have to have that exemption in place, which takes roughly 6 to 12 months from the FAA to get that in place. Well, I started this process 4 months before I was going to be flying, maybe 6 months. So I knew I wasn't going to have that exemption in place. Then you have to find somebody else who has their exemption that is willing to let you fly under their exemption.
Gotcha.
Okay. So, and that's in addition to the Part 107 license you have to have and your pesticide certification that you have to have. So you have to do those tests as well. So it was, excuse me again, all these things coming together at once and just figuring them out.
Sure.
So kind of a mess.
So you had like a 4 to 6 month period. You're kind of like building all this stuff out. Did you start flying before you left to kind of like even see if you like it? Like, I mean, like this would be kind of a scary thing if you just jumped off the cliff and then you're like, I don't really like flying these. Like, now what am I going to do?
That wasn't really an issue for me. I don't know. I mean, I've flown drones a little bit, and I'd say they're really fun to fly. But flying something for 15 hours a day, all day, every day, maybe not so fun. Well, I wasn't so focused on that. I was more focused on, okay, what's this business model going to look like? I know that I'm going to enjoy the work enough that it's not going to bother me, especially because it's a window of time. It's seasonal. I'll tell you, if I had to do 100 hours a week like I did during fungicide season all year round, I wouldn't have even looked at this because I was there's no way.
It'd burn you right out.
Yeah.
Or you'd hire people that would then get burnt out, and then you'd have all these promises to growers that you couldn't fulfill on.
Exactly. So I think because the limited nature of the season, that didn't concern me too much. Some of that stuff I just didn't really give two thoughts to. So, but I did get some practice with some of these drones, flying them through this other guy who had his 137. He did some training and allowed me to jump in because kind of the understanding was I was operating separate from him. So he wasn't going to be babysitting me, for lack of a better word, or overseeing me visually day to day. He had to trust that I was competent and knew what I was doing. So I got some flight practice and things like that. The other thing is these drones, they're fairly foolproof. I mean, they have obstacle detection, they have terrain follow, they have all these safety features. Like you have to turn those things off intentionally before you can really fly it into anything. So there's some idiot proofing that's been done, to help make them more safe that way. So I wasn't too scared of that,
Well, and I would argue too, your trailer setup helps so much to keep visual line of contact. Cause I think that'd be the biggest problem is like, if you're at the corn level and you're next to a 6 foot tall, like whole wall of corn, the second it flies over you can't see it.
No, it's gone.
So you're like, I hope that the camera shows me everything because I'm just flying blind, So I think that helps a little bit too.
Yeah, and I mean, to get legal per the FAA, you're supposed to maintain visual line of flight at all times, So yes, having that platform and positioning yourself in different field locations relative to the elevation and changes of the field, all those things, those are all factors that go into it and how you do the setup and how you spray and all that kind of stuff. So there's some logic there. You have to really think about, okay, where am I spraying? What am I doing? What's my work? What's the wind direction if I have wind? Because you don't want to be getting blasted with these chemicals all day long, Right. So things like that. A lot of factors that go into the actual planning of the work. So in those things, I mean, that was kind of learn as you go a little bit. Certainly I was aware of these factors, but when it came time to, okay, it's game day, we're out at this field, what are the conditions? Do I have an opportunity to modify my setup or change anything that's going to allow us to do this more effectively? So there's that as well. But,
So as you're looking at the business and you're kind of planning to start flying, doing this type of thing, what was kind of your prediction on like a number of acres you needed that first year to like even make money from there, prove that it's worth it? Or what was kind of your goal that first year, a metric or some kind of like, if I can at least get to here, I know this is going to work, or that, what was kind of that pie in the sky for you?
Well, I mean, doing some basic math, you think, okay, you determine your price, what you're going to charge per acre, then, easy math, how many number of acres do I want to cover? Which to me, I'm kind of a maximize mentality, if you will. Like, okay, if this thing can do X amount of acres, that's what I want to do, right? Well, we were told kind of coming into this that, the drones I fly are DJI T40s currently. They're always adding new models and things like that. It's a whole other conversation. But that drone, if your conditions are right, if your fields are good, flat, fairly close together, you can cover, they said basically 6,000 acres with one drone. So I'm like, all right, well, I mean, I'm new at this, but I wanted to target 6,000. But as we started looking at things and efficiency and reading what I could find and seeing other videos, it kind of became clear that, well, you're probably going to be pushing it. And my work formed up in the way that I was, 2 hours west of where I lived, 2 hours south of where I lived, an hour east of where I lived. So there's a lot of drive time. There's a lot of moving
Set
around,
up, tear down, refill tanks,
yeah, all that stuff.
The dead space you're not actually like spraying.
Yeah, and so that's a big time suck. It takes up a lot of extra time. And so I thought, well, I'll back it down to 4,000 acres. I think that's a reasonable number that we can do that won't be pushing us too much. Well, then I started getting calls from people. Hey, can you get to me? Hey, can you do this? Hey, can you do that? And things happened to where it formed up to where we did, 6,400 acres with one drone, and we had a really long season. So I mean, the season ran almost 6 weeks, which is a little bit too long, but it worked out, And my customers, the ones that I told, I said, hey, I'll fit you in at the end, but you're gonna have to wait, and they were comfortable doing that. So, and there's some trade-offs there economically as far as okay, does a grower put on fungicide or do they hold off? So there's a lot of debate that way, but 6,400 acres basically. So that's where we ended up.
Well, that first season, I remember you were just like burning the candle at both ends. Like, tell me a little bit about that. Like, the sprint that it was because I mean, you want work to start the bit. That's what you need. Like the worst case would be you're calling and no one's picking up, and you're like, well, I got this trailer and all this chemical. Like I have nothing to do. But the opposite happened. It's like you're going crazy. Tell me a little bit about that, like schedule, the amount of like workload pressure, and kind of like what that was going through your head when you were doing that.
Yeah, I think I was pretty fortunate. I was pretty blessed with how things turned out the first season. In that, some growers they want their fungicide like the day that it tassels. Like, hey, I want you out here. Okay, great. So I guess backing up a little bit. So fungicide gets applied typically at tassel for corn. And then there's personal preferences within that window. So there are some guys that wanted it, hey, it tasseled, get out here. So that's kind of where I started. I had a customer that they recognized that this was, well, all my customers knew this was my first year, but this one guy in particular, he's like, hey, I got a couple fields up here. It's a little bit earlier than I want you to come and spray. But he said, go ahead and do these, because I think he was gracious. He just wanted me to get some experience and get some acres. And that actually, I'm thinking back to that first field we did for him was just kind of a pain. It was just frustrating. We were figuring out settings and things like that. Like we had practiced, but when it comes to real time decisions and factors, it's like, okay, we had to navigate and figure out what the heck was going on. So we learned a lot through those first few fields. And then that same customer, he was saying, most of my stuff I want you to do later towards silk, brown silk. And then there were guys that were in the middle where it's like, hey, just get it done within this window and we're good to go. So because of that, because of what my customers wanted, I was able to pretty well just kind of fit them in where it logically made sense based on what they preferred. And then from there, it was just communication, staying in touch with them, letting them know when I think we're going to be there. I knew this guy I was doing this many acres for, this is going to take X number of days, 3-4 days. And then I'm planning on going to this guy. So I had the schedule kind of all in my head, and then we would modify and change as needed to make things work. And then, of course, there were those few calls where most people I just had to say, no, sorry, I can't get to you. But I had a couple that I could squeeze in, just real small jobs for them when we had an afternoon that it didn't maybe make sense to make an hour or 2 hour trip to somewhere because we were going to get there, set up, spray for an hour, and then be done for the day. So I could squeeze in some other stuff. So, I don't know, things just kind of worked out pretty well for the most part.
Because that 6 week period, you're basically working sun up to sundown. Like if the sun is out, you're flying.
Yeah.
How did that kind of like wake you up to like the amount of effort it's going to take to get this all done on your own?
I expected it. I really did. I mean, I knew once fungicide season was here, it was go all out. So I think part of it was just being prepared mentally for what this was going to be like. And I don't sleep as much as I should anyway, so it didn't necessarily bother me at first. Now, the first week, I basically got 4 hours of sleep a night for the entire, every night. So 28 hours of sleep the entire week. So I was dragging at that point to where after that, like I would take a night here and there and just get some extra sleep. And then, of course, geography kind of helped too in terms of, I almost said geology. That's hilarious. Geography helped in that some of these jobs were closer to Boone. So I didn't have a 2 hour drive back, so I stayed at my dad's place a couple of weeks. So quick drive back, eat some supper, basically go to bed. So I kind of found ways to kind of sneak in some extra sleep when I could, so that I wasn't just absolutely exhausted. But overall, I was just planning ahead, right? So we had drinks on hand. I had food ready to go. My wife helped with meal prep and making me some food so that I could just grab my stuff in the morning and go. So it's just preparation for things, But again, I had an expectation of this is what it was going to be. So I knew that, and I prepared. My sister Hannah, her husband Nick, worked with me. He graciously took that on last season, and he was great. He actually was my wake up call some mornings when I was just dragging. So younger guy, I think he had no problem with it. So it was long days for him too. But we worked well together, and I think we just teamed up and we just did what needed to be done, knowing that this wasn't going to last forever. This was just temporary. So I think that helped too. It was like, hey, there's an end. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not 6 months away. It's a few weeks away. We can get through it. So,
Sure.
Yeah.
It's super interesting because there's this like seasonality piece to it. Because what are you doing like the rest of the year? I mean, you have this 6 week just complete balls out sprint.
Yep.
Or do you just not work the rest of the year? Like, what's the structure of how you allocate your time now that you're not spraying right now?
I mean, as much as I'd like to say I don't do anything the other 46 weeks of the year, that's not the case. I did take some downtime after fungicide was done. This year, I intend to be more busy with cover crop. So for the if there's growers that are watching this, cover crop is obviously a big thing that is continuing to get more popular in certain applications for certain people. There's this ongoing debate of, okay, for cover crop, what they would prefer is harvest your corn and soybeans and then come in and drill that seed. It's a more effective way of getting a good stand, of getting a good crop to produce, right? Ground application is just going to do that for you. But aerially, they want to get on sooner than post-harvest, because once they harvest, you don't have a lot of time before it starts getting cold for that seed to germinate and take root. So the solution there is to fly it on. So you're getting it there earlier. It gets run into the ground when they are harvesting. But you don't get as good of a stand count. You don't get as good of a product necessarily, but it does give that seed more time to germinate, take hold, and take root and have that effect that they're looking for. So
sure.
We did several hundred acres of cover crop last year. I'd like to do a few thousand this year is kind of the goal, which from the conversations I've been having, it sounds like there are some guys out there that they're going to want me. Like, basically, I expect to go from fungicide one day to cover crop the next day would be ideal.
Sure.
So
I'll
you
do your 6 week sprint.
Yeah.
And then go straight into another couple weeks of cover crop.
Yeah. And there's some variable there too. Working with some places to line up some contracts potentially to kind of give me a better idea of how long that window is going to be. But I mean, I even did some cover crop into late October, might have even been early November. I don't remember the dates off the top of my head. So there's more of a window. There's a couple months there too, depending on what these programs require. So
sure.
I'd like to stay busy with that as well. So that's one area. Fungicide, cover crop. Another one is products. So getting into kind of the market of things as far as agriculturally, there's so many products, there's so many companies, and they're all looking to add value. That's what I want to do. I mean, that's my bottom line is I want to add value for my customers. I want to provide a quality service. I want to be a good representation of the drone industry, because this is going to continue to get bigger and bigger, which is exciting, but I want to do it right, And I've already heard a lot of horror stories of guys that I don't know what they're doing. I don't think they know what they're doing, and that's part of the problem.
We're putting gasoline in the tanks and we're lighting the whole field on fire.
Yeah, Oh gosh. And there's just people that you give somebody a big helicopter, basically, they're going to find dumb stuff to do with it. Now, admittedly, some of that stuff is funny, but I don't want to go into specifics. I don't want to draw attention to it. But the business owner side of me is very serious about what I do, and I don't want things getting messed up, So I want to be a good representation. I want to so part of my business is to find good products that add value and will help increase a grower's bottom line. That's really what I want to do. So currently working with a seed treatment and a micronutrient foliar. So for those that don't know, there's a lot of products you can add them at different growth stages of the plant. This foliar that I'm working with gets added right in with your fungicide. The most benefit comes from that stage of growth, getting that micronutrient profile into a plant at that key growth stage to help that plant thrive and produce its best fruit, right? Sure. So I spent a lot of time since November, basically, reaching out to potential customers, whether that's cold calls or more recently dropping by and just stopping in, introducing myself, making them aware of, hey, I'm a drone operator, in your area in a lot of these cases. So I'll talk to them about that. I'll talk to them about products that are going to help improve their yields and just see where they're at, just have conversations. So, which I love doing. I love connecting with people in this industry. Really everybody that I talk to, almost every single person I can learn something from, which is great. I think that's what you need to do if you want to perfect your craft, if you want to master what you're doing, you need to understand your customer base. And what's unique and interesting and fun and all these different things is that everybody has a different strategy in some ways. I mean, some guys are really, really big on certain products and some guys don't want anything to do with them. There's even guys that are big on fungicide and some guys that don't do any fungicide. Now, these last couple of years, because the seasons have been drier, what that's led to is not as much prevalence of things like tar spot that fungicide is meant to help control.
Yep.
So there hasn't been a need in some cases for fungicide as much. But the fear, the known concern that everybody has is if we have a really wet year, we have more wet conditions that allow for more fungus growth and more development of things like tar spot. It can decimate crops in a really bad way. I mean, I've heard horror stories of 50% yield loss, Sure. And if you're raising 240 bushel corn and it's down to 120, even with market prices being where they're at today, $4 corn, that's a huge hit, So
Sure.
Things are always changing and evolving, but that's kind of how I've been spending my time. I'm getting off track here, but spend my time reaching out to people, letting them know who I am, what I do. And that's led to some really good conversations. There's people that have called me that said, hey, we want to talk to you about what you have to offer, what you're doing, see if my services that I provide are something that they can utilize. So Sure. That's been pretty cool.
And finding people that are so quickly, obviously it's a needed service. There's people reaching out to you and kind of contacting you that way.
Yep.
Where did a lot of those people come from? I mean, you mentioned the initial kind of like friends and family, people connected who like, oh, I'm starting this business. But now you got people like around the state that are, hey, can you come? Like, do farmers talk to each other and just refer you? Like, where are you finding these people?
I mean, hopefully farmers are talking to each other. And I have had a little bit of that. I mean, I've been reaching out to some farmers locally around kind of where I live, kind of between Ankeny and Boone. And just dropping by and introducing myself. And some of them said, hey, did you stop by and talk to so-and-so? And yeah, that was me. Oh, great. I'm glad you stopped. Come on in. We want to hear more from you type of thing. Sure. So some of that. One guy that called me, he's with a co-op around here. And he said, hey, you called one of our customers. I have no idea who that customer is. But he said, this guy said that you do drone application. We've been looking for applicators to do that kind of work with us.
That's great, though. I mean, for a co-op, you can now it's all like one area and it's a bigger footprint.
Yeah.
I think that's what would you say is like the biggest improvement you need to make this coming season compared to last season in terms of like efficiency of the business? You mentioned that's how your brain works. What was like the biggest piece of the business that you're like, next year we have to improve this to make it better?
Gosh, there's so that's I don't know if there's one. If I had to say one big thing, it's improving our efficiency when it comes to chemical handling and mixing, because that is what necessarily because it was just me and Nick, it was me mixing every batch of chemical. Well, by growing to the goal is to have teams of 3, so 2 drone pilots and a runner or a filler, if you will, filling tanks and swapping batteries. Well, those people will be able to trade off or maybe have one pilot continue to fly while the other guy's mixing up the next batch of chemicals. So in terms of daily efficiency, it's not something like that. The chemical side of things, making sure that we're continuing to keep drones in the air at all times. We should be able to do that, but I couldn't fly and mix chemical at the same time, know? So that necessitated that we slowed some things down. But even with that, we had super productive days. Now, outside of that, there were things like pump failures, generator issues, a couple errors on my side of things as a pilot that I did incorrectly that slowed us down. So now that I have an awareness of those things, I can teach what I have learned to my employees. Hey, if you have this issue, here's what we do, or maybe I need to handle it while they continue to fly, that type of thing,
Sure.
I learned so much just by flying the drone and just by having different situations pop up, and I'm going, what's going on? Like, why is the drone doing this? Okay, it did this. What do I do now? So through my experience, it just gives me an opportunity to now pass that on so that hopefully you can prevent some of these things. You're not going to be able to prevent everything. It's just not going to happen. And I get that. So that's another thing. I've learned all these things that happen throughout the season. I can now predict and say, okay, for X amount of drones, I want to cover X amount of acres in 2024. And I want to account for this factor and that factor and these different types of things. Mm-hmm. So that's a big part of it. Another one is drone maintenance and service, making sure that I can get parts, pieces, things like that quickly, so that if we have an incident, and I had a couple of them, that I either have the parts on hand and I can, I just swap the blades myself. I know how to do that. But for motors and ESCs and some of these more technical things, I have to rely on somebody else. So making sure that I have the maintenance support that I need so that we can keep up in the air, keep flying at all times. So those are the big things, I think.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Well, I think too, it's like the obvious thing, which I think you've been alluding to, is like finding more growers and more acres locally here. Because I think that the dead space between driving to the job site, filling tanks, driving back, it's like if I can get those 2 hours to the job and back, that's 4 hours out of the day. If I just flew locally, I could quadruple my revenue. Like it's like, oh, if all the acres are central Iowa, it's like, boom, like just go down the block and down the block. I think that's a big thing. I was talking with a guy that does like roofing, and he said that's the number one thing is it's like, if we're doing a one roof, we want every neighbor in that entire neighborhood to know who we are. If they want us to do their roof, like we'll go across the street because it's so much more efficient. Our trucks are already there. All of our equipment's there. Our supplies, like it's just easier because then it's there and more efficient. Because a lot of times he was saying they'll give them like a prorated, he's like, if I'm already in the area, we'll give you like 10% off, or we'll give you some kind of benefit or incentive to like, hey, get on the train here because we are already in the area. We might as well like fly your field too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the dream, right? I mean, I pulled this too far away. The dream is to, in my mind, now, if you're an existing customer that's farther away from me, earmuffs, but to have all my acres be between Ankeny and kind of the Boone area. That's kind of the sweet spot, if you will. But that being said, I have some great customers from last year that, I mean, I'm taking care of them first. Even I met with a guy yesterday. He's an hour and a half away from me, but I told him, yeah, you want me to fly again? I'll fly again for you, because he's a great guy. And I want to take care of the guys that gave me a shot when they really didn't have to, because I'm trying to think, for all of these guys that I flew for, I was the first drone applicator they'd ever used. And a lot of these guys had never even seen one fly. Much less have them apply product on their crops. So
it's more of like this new technology, because I think there's the bell curve of technology adoption in ag. I think a lot of people assume like a bunch of old dudes that are just grouchy that don't want to use tech. But then there's the early adopters, there's the laggards, but then there's the early adopters that are like, I got to get my hands on this. Or it's like self-driving tractors. You've got like auto steer. You've got drone like technology. You've got all these different AI technology and components. Like there's different areas on that bell curve of technology. Where have you found most of your customers on that kind of that spectrum?
My customers, I feel like for them specifically, I feel like they're more. These guys are open-minded to trying different things, right? And I think that's a key component of it, because, back to some of the guys I've called, and they don't know me over the phone, which I totally understand. I'd like somebody to be able to get to know me, to know who I am, and okay, is this a guy that I can trust? Is this a guy I can see working with? Well, you can't really do too much of that in a phone call. You do the best you can. But some of these guys are like, nah, I don't do fungicide. It's not. I haven't seen it pay, or I don't think that it pays for whatever reason. That's been their experience. My customers are guys like, they have a certain number of acres, and they want to maximize the potential in those acres, And there are guys that farm huge amounts of land, and they're just looking to get an average return per acre across however many acres that they have, which is great. Yep. That's the best experience that they have had. That's how they want to do things, and that's fine. But I have found that my customers, they fit this niche, if you will, where they like trying products, they like trying services, they like trying new things that are going to maximize every acre. And I think they just have more of an open-mindedness towards that. And I feel like pretty much most of my customers that way, that's been the type of people that they are. So,
sure.
So because there's guys out there, I think that the dream is kind of to have 100 bushel beans and 300 bushel corn is kind of the idolized standard for a lot of people around Iowa. And it's definitely attainable, but there's a trade-off with input costs to getting that. You have to put in the inputs. And quite frankly, there's a lot of guys that have used a lot of products that didn't see any return, which I have no problem. Like if they try a product, even a product that I'm working with, if they try it and they don't see the return, I understand that. I would still encourage, hey, let's do it again, because 1 year's trial is probably not going to give you enough accurate data to know if it's really working for you or not. But the reality is a lot of guys have been burned on a lot of different products, and so that creates kind of a stigma within some of these things. And I think the same thing goes for drones, because I'm glad you brought this up. I mean, drones being a newer technology in agriculture, there's a lot of uncertainty. It's been ground rigs and airplanes for decades, and the guys that have these ground rigs, they've put hundreds of thousands of dollars into that equipment. So they have that investment. They're going to use it. They're going to ground spray because it makes sense to do that for them,
Yep.
But there's a lot of data coming out now, which is quite interesting. From Bex did this multi-location study around the Midwest, and I actually have the book. It's sitting right behind me. I was looking at it before I came here, just kind of reviewing some of the data, and it compared ground rigs versus drones, ground rigs versus planes versus helicopters, plane versus drone, all these different scenario setups for fungicide application. And what's crazy is that the drone basically showed a higher yield increase on pretty much every single test versus a plane, a helicopter, or even ground rigs. So, because a lot of ground rigs, though they apply between 10 and 20 gallons of mostly water, but some chemical per acre, drones, airplanes, helicopters, it's 2. So it's a lot less quantity of water. Well, the prevailing mindset is if I'm doing a ground rig, I want to soak that plant. If I'm making a pass and I'm potentially running over some of my product, I'm going to maximize the benefit. But what's interesting is this data is showing that drones are even getting a better yield boost over traditional ground methods, which
sure.
As time goes on,
it's because you can fly lower, right, than a plane would. A crop dusting plane can't get 20 feet off the ground. I mean, they could, but it's probably not advised.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of factors. I think the biggest thing is certainly when you're looking at just ground versus drone, you're not running over anything. So certainly that makes a big difference. The drone does a great job of penetrating the canopy and getting that product dispersed onto the foliage. It does a good job of getting coverage, and I think that's what the data is showing. Right. Airplanes, as much as I respect these crop dusters, because these guys they're wild. I mean, they do some crazy stuff that I would never do. There's a lot of videos out there, some crazy stuff that's been done. They do a great job. They do as good as they can, but the reality is it's hard when you're flying that fast. In this white table, if it's our field, it's hard to start that pass at exactly the right spot and then cut off the flow of your chemical at the other end of the field accurately. It's hard to be accurate. And if you have trees, power lines, whatever for obstacles, you just can't. You can only get so low and so consistent across that ground. Same with a helicopter; they do better, because they don't have to maintain that forward trajectory as much, but they still have issues with elevation consistency and things like that.
Sure.
So with the drone, the technology, I mean, you're GPSing the field. I mean, it runs off of satellites. You're geofencing the field, and it's only going to spray within that boundary. In the downward terrain follow, it maintains that consistent elevation off the canopy.
Sure.
It's not perfect, but it does really good, and it's continuing to get better because the software that's guiding these things is only going to get better and better and better. That's one of the things I'm really excited about. It's just going to get. It's going to be cool. So
sure.
Yeah.
What was kind of the first reaction from family and friends and even coworkers at your previous job? When you said, I'm quitting my job to do this, what was kind of the general consensus? Did people think you were crazy, cool? Let me know how this goes. Were they optimistic, or what was kind of the general consensus?
Well, I mean, my family, they're always supportive. I mean, unless I was going off the deep end, but I was really excited about this too, which I think my excitement, and then backing it up with action is a key component, right? I was talking about this, but I was also doing the work necessary to get it up and running. So they were supportive, They were supportive of me doing this. Yeah, I mean, there's a risk factor involved for sure. Friends, unless they're really close friends, I don't really care what they say anyway.
Sure.
Hopefully that's all right to say. But look, I was going to make the move that I felt was best for my family, and what was best for me and for what I wanted from my life long term, not just short term, but long term. And I see long term runway with this business and where it has the potential to go. So at the end of the day, it was, okay, can I make this work what are the finances behind it, and all those types of details. And certainly, I mean, there's some nervous points where it's like, okay, am I crazy? Does this make sense? Coworker side, I didn't tell anybody anything.
Sure.
So no
you
offense
just stopped
to them.
coming to work one day.
No, yeah,
I
no.
assumed you'd
no,
left.
I mean,
They're still waiting for you to come in on tomorrow for work. So
yeah. So no, I mean, I kept it, obviously I kept it really quiet. I've always tried to keep kind of my work stuff kind of separate. Just the way that I am. Certainly I have friendly connections from work, and I still stay in touch with some of those people. But I think when it comes to my day-to-day things in my life, it's like, I don't know, I've just always kind of maintained a healthy distance. So I didn't tell anybody anything. I mean, just because I didn't want to create any friction. I didn't want to create any problems. I wanted my transition away from that to be smooth. The other factor was I didn't know when that was going to even happen. I mean, the goal was basically to work as long as I could. And then when the time came, give my notice, and then I was going to be done. So,
sure.
Yeah, I mean, when I left, I left on hopefully good terms as I possibly could. I didn't want there to be hard feelings. I certainly don't. I wish everybody there the best. You know, I've worked for good companies. I'm appreciative of everything they did for me, for my career. It's contributed to my development, both personally and professionally. So I wanted to leave on a good note, you know. So hopefully that, I don't know, you'd have to ask them, but hopefully that's what happened. You know, and as far as I know, I'll stay in touch with those guys. Everyone's still doing just fine without me. They could fill my position and move on. So yeah, from that respect with coworkers, I just kind of kept it on the DL and didn't really say a whole lot, and
sure,
and then let them know when it was time to go. So
right,
yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting too, thinking about as you were like going off doing this business and kind of the potential for growth. What's kind of the big picture vision? You mentioned having like teams of 3. Mm-hmm. Are you early enough in this business where you think you could have statewide coverage and have teams in different cities? Like, what's kind of the big picture vision for what this could be in the future?
That's a great question. There's a lot changing in this industry, even from a year ago. This time last year, I was putting together financing. I was starting to get purchases made and starting to have this form up physically, and then doing the work to line up the customers. But even 12 months later, there's a lot more companies coming into this. I mean, the industry is really picking up on it. The Des Moines Ag Expo, that was just a few weeks ago. There's a bunch of different drone providers there. And I think there's a lot of good people looking to add value to this industry. So, it's going to continue to create competition in a healthy way, I think. Hopefully, my hope is that people that are entering this industry are doing it right. They're doing it good. They're recognizing this is not as easy as it looks. I think there are some people that think that it's super easy and it's just simple, and you just do this and then you just kick back and relax the rest of the year. That's not really the way that it goes. You know, there's a lot of things, especially being just a small business owner. Admittedly, there's a lot of things that I wasn't even really thinking about, you know, when I was and I was so focused on getting things started. A lot of these things I just didn't think about until after the season was over. And it's like, oh, okay, hey, I have to do this. I have to think about this and all this different stuff. So, where I want things to go, like I said, 3-man teams, 2 drones, 1 runner, working together, covering a lot of ground. Ideally, I'd like to have 2 of those this year. I'd like to have 4 drones in the air. That's what I'm shooting for. We'll see. You know, the work is definitely there. Right now, I'm just working on. I want to be a good ambassador, and I'm spreading my name out there as much as I can. You know. And stopping by places, introducing myself, which that's gone really well too. I want to say these guys are great to talk to. Growers, farmers, whatever they want to be called. In pretty much every situation, I stop by and they don't know who I am, you know, but I just introduce myself, say why I'm here, what I'm doing, and we just have a conversation, you know. And I appreciate their receptiveness, being willing to talk to a guy who's bringing to them a service that they probably haven't used, may not have a whole lot of information on. They've seen it, they've heard about it, but potentially considering using this within their operation is a cool thing, you know. So I'm having a lot of fun doing that. So right now it's just getting all over the state. I think long term, dude, I don't even know what 24 is fully going to look like yet, much less 25, 26, 27. But yeah, I see this really big. I would love to find people that see this potential in doing what I do and possibly want to do it themselves, whether that's FFA. I always want to say FFA students at DMAC, Iowa State Ag students. I don't know. I mean, I'm looking for people that want to be a part of this, and maybe that means mentoring and helping them to do the same thing that I'm doing. Providing a quality service in a technological market that's going to continue to grow. I don't know where this industry is even going. I see, drones are going to be a huge part of it. I do believe that. Are drones ever going to replace ground rigs? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. I mean, if the data continues to trend that way, guys may decide we're just going to go to aerial. I don't know. That could be. That'd be pretty sweet. I think it'd be pretty cool. I mean, there's technology coming where you can already swarm some of the smaller drones. I think we're going to get to a point where you can swarm these large ones too, Sure. And I have these images in my head of having 6, 8, 10 of these things, doing this massive field, just all running in sequence down and back. Is that what it's going to be? Maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of ideas. There's a lot of stuff spinning up here that I don't know where it's going to materialize or what it's going to do. But yeah, over the next couple of years, I just want to expand, want to cover more ground, provide more products and services. Another service I'm looking at is multispectral drone imaging, which is going to not only create 3D maps, topography maps of fields, but it can also look at crop health, stand count, help you get a better idea of what the health of your crop is looking like, and then allow you to either do prescription mapping and targeted spraying, variable rate spraying, things like that. I mean, there's ground rigs that do that now too. But I think that as drones continue to get more prevalent and the technology increases, there's just going to be more and more and more things that we can do, more services that we can provide that are going to help farmers to fix those problem spots in their fields and maximize every acre that they want to maximize. So there's a lot of stuff coming that way. So,
sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting too, just the growth could be, I mean, there's so many different ways. If there's other flying people that like get together, some kind of like collective of you guys, or even like you said, if you're bring on a FFA student that wants to get involved in it, like they learn to kind of run a truck, run a crew, and then you could be like, okay, you're running this area of Iowa. Like we're going to go get work in this area. You can go there. We can trust you to run that rig. I can focus here. You can go there. Like you can kind of start dispatching people, which could be really cool, I think, too.
Yeah. It's exciting. I mean, it's a fun industry to be in. Admittedly, there's a lot of things that are still needing to be worked out, a lot of bugs and it's still, I think it's still in its infancy. But the potential for it is absolutely massive. And I need to get I'm so focused on Iowa. I don't even think about the entire Midwest. And, I'm a part of some of these groups on social media that it's people doing this all over the country, all over the world, and so I know that it's growing in other areas as well. But I think there's just so many acres to cover, and there's just so much potential to do more and to do better and continue to improve. And I would like to stand out as a leader in the drone application industry over time is really a big goal.
Sure. I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, where can people find more about your company, learn more about you and kind of connect with you and see what you're up to? Yeah.
So website is precisionaa.com, 2 A's. I didn't want to write out the whole name and make this massively long web handle. So precisionaa.com. You can reach out to me there. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. So we got some social media pages there as well. You can check out some of our work from last season. And that website, if you fill out that form, it'll put me in touch with you and drop some information. I'll give you a call. So
sounds great, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. Because like I said, I think it's a really unique career path and kind of business to just pop up. And excited for you to explore this thing and have some excitement about all the stuff that's going on with it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity and looking forward to where the future takes us. So
absolutely.
All right.
Well, thanks for coming on, man.
Yes, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching yet another episode of the Rhymes with Odd podcast. We really do appreciate your support. If you could give us a 5-star review on Apple iTunes, that makes a world of difference, guys. Also, if you're tuning in on YouTube or Spotify, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss another episode, and check us out on social media. Also, if you'd like to inquire more about our services here at Snod Media Group or learn about doing your own podcast for your own business, you can find us at snodmedia.com. We'll see you in the next episode. Peace.